This is a Six News podcast. This is NewsWire with Austin Pollock.
Hello everyone and welcome along to the very first episode of the NewsWire. I'm Austin Pollock. It is brilliant to have your company wherever and however you might be listening to us, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. It is fantastic to have your company. We have an absolutely massive show coming up for you here for our inaugural episode. Peter Fegan from 4BC Radio in Brisbane joins us to unpack the Cricket Australia controversy and why they're being accused of snubbing Australia Day. Thinh Nguyen from 6 News Sports Watch has your full AFL preview, what to expect this round, the teams to watch, and the big questions ahead. Overseas, and our North American correspondent Wyatt Sharpe breaks down the latest in the Diddy trial after a major verdict dropped this week. And 6 News chief reporter Roman Mackinnon sits down with a brand new federal MP, what they've told us about the future of politics in Canberra and for their seat. The headlines are first, the deep dives are next. This is the NewsWire. Let's start with some of the headlines, and you might want to get that umbrella out, or rug up at least, because a powerful east coast low is causing significant disruptions across New South Wales and some parts of Queensland, including the cancellation of multiple flights between Brisbane and Sydney and out of those two airports. The storm has led to destructive winds, flooding, power outages, and over 4,000 incident reports to the New South Wales State Emergency Services. A major data breach at Qantas has compromised the personal information of 6 million customers. While financial data remains secure, the airline is investigating the breach and has urged customers to monitor their accounts for suspicious activity.
Breaches like this happen because there are criminals wanting to rip off companies and rip off individuals. And it's really important for people to now be observing their own security as well. And if you're cold called or get an email out of the blue with links in it, you ignore that and only deal with Qantas through the official channels.
And Foreign Affairs Minister Penny Wong says that Anthony Albanese is very flexible about arrangements to meet with US President Donald Trump, and that Secretary of State Marco Rubio made very clear they're keen for a meeting. Take a listen.
The Prime Minister has said, we're obviously very flexible about those arrangements. The President is a very, very busy man. But I was pleased that Secretary Rubio made clear that, obviously that they're keen for a meeting. They want to reschedule it. It was disappointing, as he said, that they had to reschedule because the President had to return as a consequence of what was occurring in the Middle East.
Let's kick things off with the latest on the Sean Diddy Combs trial, and after 8 weeks of trial and 34 witnesses, a verdict has been reached. And the host of the Wyatt Sharpe Show and 6 News North American correspondent Wyatt Sharpe joins me on the line now from Canada. Wyatt, hello to you. I think, if I remember correctly, it was in September. I remember walking into work and watching the headline that Sean Diddy Combs was arrested, or these charges were coming against him. So how did we get to this point today?
Yeah, really, if we're kind of looking here at just a timeline, you mentioned September. So essentially, he was indicted in September of 2024 for racketeering conspiracy, for sex trafficking by fraud and coercion, and then, of course, transportation to engage in prostitution. That's what happened when he was indicted, and kind of, it was stemming, really, and all of that came from multiple different women, including people like Cassie Ventura and someone who we don't quite know, so they've been referred to as Jane Doe over the course of this case, who were essentially accusing him of drugging, of gang rapes, and really just kind of, a pattern of abuse that really, it seemingly, according to the case anyways, has dated back well into the 1980s, even 1990s. So yeah, there's a lot of kind of attributes to it. Even if we look, kind of pre-trial before all of this was kind of released into the public, we know that prosecutors raided a number of his properties in March of 2024. They seized a number of his devices and took, a lot of narcotics away from him, a lot of weaponry items that he had within some of his residences as well. So that's kind of, I guess, more of the pre-trial and kind of the early stage stuff. And then I don't know, I'm sure we can get into perhaps the stuff that, actually led to this moment.
Yeah, well, let's get into that now, because obviously you touched on it there, Cassie's testimony. How much do you think that impacted the verdict?
Yeah, I mean, quite a bit, obviously. I mean, if we look to, again, I think it's important if we go through kind of a full timeline just as to what happened. So it really kind of started, the trial started in early May, and it's been happening in New York. And so a number of, really public trials oftentimes happen in New York. You looked at the Johnny Depp trial
Mm,
that happened between him and Amber Heard, just because that's kind of where the media and the press can get the most access. And these
yeah.
types of cases they know are going to be heavily scrutinized. So the trial kind of started there again in kind of the beginning of May, and then the prosecution over the course of the trial, which kind of was obviously, as I said, from May until kind of the end of June, June 24th, June 25th ish there. They called about a total of 34 witnesses, and Cassie Ventura was one of those witnesses. Of course, there was many others as well. And there was former employees that were invited. Then they were able to go into great detail about a bunch of his quote unquote freak off parties, if you will, that involved drugs, that
Mm,
involved a number of different acts of alleged violence. So again, Ventura playing a big part of that. But then also, if we look to kind of in recent weeks with the defense, where obviously after the case was over, they rested. They didn't call any more witnesses. Closing arguments were concluded again by the end of June, not that long ago. And it only took 3 days for the jury to deliberate. And then, of course, they gave the verdict today. And so, I mean, people, I think it's fair to say, were surprised. You know, the fact that he was acquitted too on this idea of racketeering conspiracy, but
mm,
also on sex trafficking, because that was one of the things that he was being accused of that was getting the most credibility and that people had seen as perhaps the most likely that he would get convicted
yeah.
on. And that actually didn't end up being the case. He ended
Yeah.
up getting convicted on the transportation to engage in prostitution.
Mm.
And that was the part that involved Cassie Ventura and then again the anonymous Jane Doe.
Yes. So take us through each of the charges. There were five in total, and only two of them he was found guilty on.
Yeah, I mean, certainly there's a number of different kind of aspects to look at this, but if we're looking at the five charges themselves, you have, as I said, the racketeering conspiracy. He was found not guilty on that. You have sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. He was found not guilty on that as well. That's really kind of just the accusation of trafficking multiple different women, going across state lines, using threats, drugs, manipulation. So again, he was found not guilty on that, which again, I would argue actually going into it, obviously, when again the final arguments concluded on June 27th, if I had to think to myself, which one of these might he actually get convicted on, if any, that would have perhaps been the most probable.
Mm.
And then, as I said, I mean, one of the ones that he was convicted on, well, two of them actually were with respect to this idea of transportation to engage in prostitution, which is really this idea again that Diddy transported both Cassie Ventura, but then also the anonymous Jane Doe across state lines for illegal sexual activity. So he was found guilty on both of those. And then there was one as well that was dropped from before the trial actually started. It was deemed kind of not applicable. It
Mm.
wasn't pursued in this instance. And that was this idea of witness tampering and obstruction. And basically, what had happened with respect to that is prosecutors were looking at considering a charge of obstructing justice or intimidating witnesses. But again, that ended up being dropped prior to the trial just for kind of a lack of basis, if you
Mm.
will.
Yeah. And I will just quickly say there's been so much, like just opening Instagram, and I don't know what your feed's like, but like because of mine, because of getting lots of news stuff and just memes as well, because it's made everyone's For You pages with all this Diddy stuff, and there's all these old videos of him, like he was interviewed, I think, with Ellen DeGeneres, and he made some sort of
Yeah.
comment, and then it's stuff like that that's really blown this case. There is so much public interest on it, isn't there?
Yeah, it's actually interesting. And I mean, I think it's important to note amongst our generation, anyways, at least in Canada, people like, I think there's this um, kind of tendency
Mm.
to go to an extreme solely for this like clickbait
Yeah,
social
same here, yeah.
media kind of idea. Yeah. And so like people will take really absurd positions and even like positions that aren't necessarily deemed absurd. Like if you look on a political level, anyways, like people in the most, recent presidential election in the United States who would go out and support a candidate, but wouldn't have any reasoning as to why they wanted to support that candidate,
Mm.
aside from they saw something on social media and they thought it was cool. So obviously, I have a lot of confidence in our generation, but there are certainly some segments of it that are a lot more vulnerable to misinformation. And I think that's certainly true with respect to this case. People might see a video on TikTok or, an Instagram post or reel, as you had pointed out, and kind of just like automatically take that and then assume, they see something on there, with respect to Diddy being innocent or Diddy didn't do the things that he was being accused of doing. And then all of a sudden, that gets spread to a friend group at a school, and then that gets spread to the entirety of the school. And even now you have, different, even in Canada anyways, there was a protest at a school recently that got a lot of, publicity and media attention with students who are bringing in like these free Diddy signs into the school. And again, I think it just kind of speaks to the fact of if you fully understood kind of the gravity of what was happening, then people wouldn't actually be going about doing that. And I should say also, it's not just an issue with young people. I think it's also just people in general. Misinformation isn't just with, our youngest people in society. It's really all demographics.
Yeah, well, as you know, we have the social media ban coming in here for, I think, under 16. So I'd say a lot of that is driven by that 15-year-old age group, just secretly. But we'll see what happens with that. It's very interesting to see how social media has changed everything. I mean, just opening it up when you get these memes, I guess they're called, I guess the brain rot and stuff like that. It can really have real world impacts like we are seeing with this Diddy case. But what are we seeing now? What's next for Sean Combs?
Well, that's a great question, to be totally honest, because I think like a lot of people right now are wondering specifically, does he go back to kind of this, this like pre-trial example? Some people are saying, he was found not guilty on some of the charges. Perhaps that means that he can go back to being that Sean Diddy Combs that you saw in that Ellen DeGeneres interview, like you had pointed out. That's just not the case.
No, that won't happen.
Quote unquote canceled forever, if you want to say that. He fully deserves it as well, I would argue. But like if we're looking at kind of the immediate future as well, he was still found guilty on the charges. So people are really, have been quick over the course of today and in recent days to point out, he was found not guilty. Well, you have to remember he was still found guilty, so he is still going to have to face sentencing, and that's going to happen at least tentatively in October. And so that has to do again with the ones he was found guilty on, obviously, which was the transportation for prostitution. And each of those carries a maximum sentence of 10 years, so a maximum of 20 years. But there are some guidelines that are in place that usually recommend less for first-time offenders, of which at least, on the record, Sean Diddy Combs is. So prosecutors have been asking, reportedly anyways, seeking about 4.5 years total is kind of the number that we're getting a sense of right now. That seems pretty light, to be totally honest, for a case that has been in the public eye so much. And I think there would be a lot of backlash if that had happened. But, if we're looking at like where Sean Diddy Combs is in the moment that we're speaking, he is still being held in federal custody for what's known basically as pre-sentencing detention. He was denied bail due to concerns of flight risk, basically. And then, of course, the fact that these are still ongoing cases and that there is still a lot of litigation that is out against him. And then just lastly, I mean, this happens in any case, but there's always kind of it's called a PSR, which is like a pre-sentence report. And it's prepared by, officers of the court, and it's evaluating, things like his personal history, his criminal history, the circumstances that occurred surrounding the offense, risk assessment, rehabilitation programming, and kind of the potential surrounding that. And really that kind of helps guide the judge's sentencing decision, because of course that has not been made yet. And then of course, if we're looking at when that decision could be made, that is when we're going to hear from prosecutors, defense attorneys, maybe some, more victims. Diddy himself may come out again, and that's when the judge will issue the formal sentence, which will include prison time. Obviously, there will be, at minimum, some type of prison time. Again, we don't know how much, maximum of 10 years. It could potentially include, after the prison time, some form of supervised release. Maybe it's a shorter sentence with that release, post-incarceration. And then, of course, there's likely to be some fines as well, and some type of kind of reparations that have to be made in order to further go beyond just the kind of serving the criminal sentence and then saying you're done with it.
My guest joining me is 6 News North American correspondent Wyatt Sharpe. Let's hit the music now, because we have some really sad news to report. It's fitting we're playing Oasis as well, because they are performing they're back together on Friday night. How about that? In Cardiff, I believe. But Wyatt, it's very sad, the news that we're about to bring you, because the breakup, the bromance, it's over. Elon Musk, Donald Trump, where did it go wrong? Because the whole thing, it's just completely blown up, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because, of course, you'll remember over the course of the election campaign, there were a lot of headlines surrounding this idea that a lot of Donald Trump's kind of internal advisors wanted Elon Musk gone and were trying to do everything possible to get him out of the public spotlight. He was reportedly going to Mar-a-Lago on a regular basis to play golf and have meals with Donald Trump. And so Donald Trump was really the only person, aside from perhaps a couple of other people, who wanted Elon Musk around. And that basically remained the case. You know, obviously he was appointed to lead the Department of Government Efficiency. And, you know, everything was going well up until really a week or two after he left that post. Because when you're a special government employee, you can only hold the position for, I think it's 86 days. And then after that, you have to... you legally cannot hold the position anymore. And so after that, then Musk went on to X, his social media platform, and spoke out against Trump's so-called Big Beautiful Bill, which is a financial, economic kind of fiscal piece of legislation that included, you know, billions of dollars really for border wall extensions, for, 3,000, I think it was, new border patrol bonuses as well. It has passed the Senate, and, you know, Musk has taken issue with that. He was reportedly trying to speak to different senators and trying to get them to vote against the bill. And of course, Musk as well is frustrated, at least if you listen to Trump, specifically because Donald Trump and the administration canceled the electric vehicle mandate that, of course, favored his company and favored Tesla. But Donald Trump has come out and said in recent days that the administration and himself can really do a lot more to harm Elon Musk if he continues down the path that he is going. He has come out and said, Elon Musk, even in recent days on, again, his social media platform, calling the Republican Party one big party. He called it, I think it was a porky party or something along those lines. And just kind of, you know, he's just frustrated, I think, with lawmakers and how they're going about this and how they are kind of unconditionally loyal to the president. And so he's trying to convince people to, you know, go beyond that, if you will, and kind of both think and speak for themselves. Yeah,
and in case you did miss it, here is the grab of Donald Trump just commenting on what his plans are for Elon.
I don't know. I think we'll have to take a look. We might have to put Doge on Elon. You know what Doge is? Doge is the monster that might have to go back and eat Elon. Wouldn't that be terrible? He gets a lot of subsidies, Peter. But Elon's very upset that the EV mandate is going to be terminated. And you know what? When you look at it, not everybody wants an electric car. I don't want an electric car. I want to have maybe gasoline, maybe electric, maybe a hybrid, maybe someday a hydrogen. If you have a hydrogen...
We'll stop it there before he goes too far off track. I mean, the White House is turning into a bit of a reality TV show. Trump's finally back in his element. But could Elon Musk actually be deported, Wyatt?
I mean, that's what Trump would like you to believe. I don't think it's very possible. I mean, Trump is really saying that about everybody right now that he doesn't support. I mean, Musk is a naturalized citizen. He was born in South Africa. Like, it's not very likely that this is going to happen under the 14th Amendment. Naturalized citizens are perfectly free to exist within the United States. I guess the only way it could happen is if Trump is able to, you know, dig something up on Elon Musk. That
Trump says a lot without a lot of backing sometimes. I think we agree.
Yeah, I mean, the short answer to this question is absolutely not. But Trump certainly loves a good soundbite on Fox News every once in a while.
Exactly right. Hey, I know you got a flight to catch tomorrow morning because it is, I think it's about 9 o'clock over there in Canada, and you were just telling me off air, 2.5 months of school holidays. Talk to me about this.
Right. I mean, I don't know. In Canada, maybe we'll start because people are gonna like make some really strong judgments based off of what I just said there. I think it's important.
I am. Don't worry.
I think it's important to note that our days at school in Canada are a bit longer, at my school anyways, than most schools anywhere else in the
Mm.
world. We start at about 8 a.m. in the morning, but then we don't finish until like 4:30. So it's
Mm.
pretty long in terms of the day. But I think it's worth it personally to get that extra time for summer break. We have, a 2.5 week sometimes break in March. That's like our spring break. We
Hmm.
get couple of weeks off for Christmas. It's a tough life,
Oh,
here
yeah.
going to school in Canada. It's pretty rough.
Yeah, my heart goes out to you, mate. Wyatt Sharp, North American correspondent, thank you so much for your company on our first episode of the Newswire.
Thank you for having me.
There's a lot happening in sport. Thinh Nguyen from Sports Watch on 6 News has been kind enough to join me here on the Newswire. Thinh, thanks a lot for your time.
Pleasure to be here.
There is a lot happening, and we will start with Cricket Australia. They've announced that they won't be holding any matches on Australia Day. Now, there's a lot of reaction coming into this, including right across the political landscape. And it's a lot of people are saying if you don't want to play on Australia Day, don't be called Cricket Australia. Now, the whole Australia Day thing, that's another issue, but I'll start with, and we will be talking to Peter Fegan a little later on from 4BC Breakfast. He has a lot of thoughts on this. But we'll start with, what are the details? What has Cricket Australia said?
Yeah, so of course, Cricket Australia announced the obviously some of the domestic schedules yesterday. As well as we've had the international schedule for a couple of weeks now. And yeah, I believe it's the for a couple of years in a row now we've noticed there's no matches on Australia Day, which is of course the national public holiday, which obviously has drawn a lot of criticism, which and a lot of opinions from across not just the sporting spectrum, but of course the Australian political spectrum. So it's a decision that's been widely felt across pretty much the whole country.
Yeah, 100%. Hey, we'll jump sports to AFL now. It's going to be an interesting clash at Marvel Stadium tonight. Dogs versus North Melbourne. Who do you think is going to come out strong on that?
Yeah, of course, it's probably an exciting matchup. We've seen both teams have improved heaps in recent weeks, but of course, you look at the Dogs who've been probably desperate to push for finals, the top eight now, and North who have sort of maybe struggled for most part of the year. Look, you'd imagine the Bulldogs would be stronger, but either way, it's an exciting game for tonight.
Yeah, and then tomorrow night, I'm not looking forward to this one because I am a Carlton supporter, and I believe you're a Carlton supporter as well, Tin. Carlton Collingwood. How's this going to go down?
Yeah, well, of course, it's probably the big one of the round. It tends to be when it tends to draw a lot of attention. Like I discussed on Sports Watch, obviously, Carlton's been all across the media
Mm.
for all the wrong reasons in recent weeks. So it's a big game, it's a big stage, and it's an opportunity for Carlton to potentially, right their wrongs or maybe magnify some of the problems in the club further, depending on the result.
I mean, it was some of the biggest publicity we've had on a national stage when bloody Icon Park was covered in graffiti and sack the boards, sack false. What do you think has to change? I know you spoke about it on Sports Watch and you can stream that now on 6 News. What do you think has to change at the club? Because, I mean, people I've spoken to, it just sounds like it's such a big culture problem there. Do you think Voss is going to go? And what about our senior leaders like Cripper and Kerno and players like that?
I mean, yeah, like I said on Sports Watch, I feel like it's a very multifaceted problem. It's one that's, of course, probably not just fully reflected on the field, but like you said, off the field as well with things regarding culture. Obviously, there's been a lot of discussion around, whether the board has to change, whether, leadership has to change, coaching has to change. It feels like there's a lot of sort of approaches to sort of tackle it with. And I can't really endorse myself as having the best solution for the club. I don't think really anyone really can, but ultimately, will there be a lot of changes come the end of the season? I feel like it's almost inevitable, especially with the spotlight on them. But yeah, I think come the next couple of weeks, I think we'll get a lot more clarity into sort of what's happening in the club and sort of what needs to change.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. It's been a rocky time. What about the Lions and Port Adelaide? Brisbane Lions are playing at home. The Lions have had an interesting few weeks leading up to the bye rounds and then through the bye. How do you think that's going to go?
Yeah, of course. So, of course, like you mentioned, it's been interesting for Brisbane coming through these next couple of weeks. Obviously, they've been strong for most parts of the year, as you'd imagine them to be. Yeah, again, coming up against Port Adelaide, who similarly to a lot of other teams around that sort of 10th to 8th spot, they're pushing for finals. Um, and look, I think it's an interesting game. I'd imagine the Lions probably just have enough to get it done, but ultimately, it's another exciting matchup this week as that fight for that race for the top 8 starts to crunch.
Yeah, 100%. It's an interesting few rounds coming up. Thinh Nguyen from Sports Watch on 6 News. You can catch him every week on Sports Watch or week thereabout. Tin, thanks a lot for your time, mate.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers. It's been about 2 months since the federal election has passed, and there obviously are a lot of new members that have come in, including the federal member for Petrie, Emma Comer. And joining me now on the line is our 6 News chief reporter, Roman Mackinnon. Roman, hello to you.
Hey Austin, how are you?
Good, mate. Good. Great to chat. So you went and spoke with Emma today?
Yeah, that's right. So we went to North Lakes, which is, of course, in the federal seat of Petrie. We spoke about a number of issues. The focus primarily around Southeast Queensland and how much of an impact that actually had on the federal election. We saw so many Labor members elected for the first time from Southeast Queensland to the federal parliament. So we had a great chat, and we'll be able to discuss it now.
Yeah, so what did she tell you? What's it like for her, and what are the impacts that she's hoping to have on the local community?
Her main focus around the local community is building a voice within herself, I guess. Just talking about, being there for her community. I spoke to her just before the interview started. She said her favorite part has just been attending all the community events that has followed since becoming the new MP. She said she's gotten her office and her seat in Parliament. So it really is an exciting time for all these new MPs. We also know they've gone to MP school, just learning how to be an MP in Parliament House in Canberra. Her first speech is coming up at the end of July. So, her main focus is just listening for the community and having a voice for her community in Petrie.
And in terms of how she got elected, was it a landslide win in that seat?
Yeah, so I asked her about the polling. She said she did not look at any polling during the campaign.
Yeah.
A very smart idea because, as we know, with Peter Dutton, his team shielded some of the polling against him. I spoke to her about the YouGov poll, which was released during the week of the election. It had predicted a 1% swing towards her. Turned out to be 5.6%.
Yep.
The two-party preferred was polling at 53 to 46 against her. That turned out to 51 to 48, of course, for her. And the primary vote for her was at 28%, but it turned out to be just over 36%. So the polls got it wrong. The polls got it wrong in Dixon as well. I won't touch too much on that, but of course, they're very close seats. So you would expect the sort of same voting and demographic in those areas, but it definitely was very interesting as the night progressed right around Southeast Queensland to look at those seats and just see how different it will be, from these coalition seats. Luke Howarth was in Petrie. He was a member there for quite some time, and Petrie actually was quite an interesting seat. I think it was 2020. Yeah, it was 2022, the first time that Petrie did not go the way of the sitting government. So he was the first member in Petrie to actually sit on the opposition bench. It was Emma Comer's first time running as well. Labor had Mick Denton, who was a bit of an embattled candidate back in 2022. She said it wasn't too hard for her to run on her first attempt. Just those grassroots campaigns and listening to her community, she said, was the main focus.
Yeah. Look, it sounds like a great chat. And when can we expect to see it out? Because I know you and I have worked on a few long-form reports together. There was Ellie Smith. There was the Qantas one. I know this one will be fantastic as well. So when can we expect to see it?
Oh, look, hopefully by let's say August. So hopefully it shouldn't take too long. I haven't figured out a deadline for myself yet, but hopefully by August we'll be able to see that. And of course, that long form report that we just spoke of, you'll be able to see it on our YouTube page and of course all of our socials. So stay tuned across our socials for more information.
100% sounds like a great chat. Roman Mackinnon, thank you very much.
Thanks, Austin.
Well, as I was talking about earlier with Thinh Nguyen from Sportswatch, Cricket Australia has scrapped its games for Australia Day. Now it is still officially our national day of celebration, despite your views on it, and it is still a public holiday. Those are both the facts. And it happens in summer, so you would think it would be the obvious idea for Cricket Australia to host a cricket game. Well, apparently not. And Peter Fegan from 4BC Breakfast had a few thoughts on this morning on his show, and he joins me now to discuss. Mate, great to chat with you. Long time no see. How are you?
Yeah, Austin, great to chat to you.
So what was your reaction to this?
Well, look, I've got to say this, and I was pretty vocal about it this morning. Cricket Australia put out a release to say, look, this is a scheduling issue. If Cricket Australia had nothing to hide, they wouldn't have put out a release. They are getting on the defensive immediately. Now, Mike Baird is the chair of Cricket Australia, who is a former Liberal Premier of New South Wales. I know Mike quite well. He's a great person. And Mike is a stern believer in celebrating Australia Day and giving people the rights to express their views. And he said last year, when this popped up again, when they said they weren't going to celebrate or acknowledge Australia Day, that he shouldn't, or Cricket Australia shouldn't be involved in making decisions for people when it came to what to tell, when it came to what they should think. And on this occasion, I don't think it's Mike Baird. Todd Greenberg was on Ben Fordham's breakfast show again this morning. He was on it December last year as well, saying the same thing. So I don't know where this is coming from, but if you're an organisation and you have nothing to hide, don't put out a release. They've deliberately put out a release so they can get on the defensive, so that if anyone had have checked their scheduling and said, oh, look, Cricket Australia, look, there's no game on Australia Day, then they would have to defend themselves. But they've come out on the front foot, which means there's more to it. And I don't think people should be fooled by the scheduling, what they've sold us about scheduling. I think it's a far deeper issue. And once again, we're seeing, sporting organisations playing politics.
I've seen a lot of comments reacting to this, saying things like, if you don't want to play on Australia Day, don't be called Cricket Australia. People seem outraged, don't they?
Yeah, that is. And it's such a good point. Don't be Cricket Australia. I mean, Australians have the right to celebrate Australia Day. It's not illegal. It is our day of celebration, is our day of recognition. Now, I do absolutely 100% respect that there will be some Indigenous people that will be offended by it. And I completely understand that, but that doesn't give us the right. That doesn't give people the right to tell us we can't do something. I mean, this madness all started when Triple J stopped the hottest 100 on Australia Day, and all of a sudden there was this public sentiment that it was not the right thing to do, that we weren't allowed to celebrate Australia Day. And generally, it's people that the people telling us to do it are woke corporations, like your Woolworths and your Coles and your Qantas. And, people are sick and tired of it. They want choice. We're allowed to do the things we want to do. And celebrating Australia Day is not illegal at all.
On an apropos of nothing, do you think Pat Cummins had something to do with this?
Look, I don't know. I mean, we've seen before that Pat Cummins uses his platform to express his views, but so does Usman Khawaja. I mean, we know that athletes do that. Do people respect it? Some don't, some do. I mean, for me, watching cricket on Australia Day is celebrating Australia, celebrating the things that make this country so laid back, that make this country so unique, and it also celebrates diversity. If we played a game against India, or one day or on Australia Day, we played against New Zealand, we would have cultures from all around the world celebrating it. It's not just Australia, it's all countries. And Australia Day is about celebrating cultural diversity as well, and celebrating all the great things about this beautiful country. And I think that once again, we have another corporation, a sporting corporation, saying, hey, we're not going to do it this year. It's down to scheduling. I don't believe it for a second. It's Australia Day. It's a public holiday. We deserve to have some sport. Cricket Australia should be putting some cricket on.
And you touched on it there, but can we really believe anything these days from organisations like this? It seems everything is PR spin to try and prove to please certain groups, in my opinion.
Yeah, look, they've got to do the right thing. It's called towing the company line. And on this occasion, it looks like they've come out on the front foot to make sure everyone's okay. Hey, nothing to see here, but people have seen through it. There is something to see here. It's a deeper issue. And I think the sooner Australia wakes up to it, the better. And there's a lot of people out there probably going, oh, it is scheduling. No, there's a deeper issue here. You don't come out the front foot. I've been in the media a long time. Companies don't come out on the front foot unless they've got something to defend.
Peter Fegan, we can catch you from 5:30am till 9am weekdays on 4BC Breakfast. Mate, thanks heaps for your time.
You're a good man, Austin. Thank you.
And that does it for our inaugural episode of the NewsWire. Thank you so much for your company. Thank you for sticking with us. And thank you for tuning in. Do be sure to follow, subscribe, do whatever you have to do to make sure you are notified for when our next episode comes out. We will, of course, have all the latest details for you and the latest news on SIXNewsAU.com and on social media at SIXNewsAU. Thank you for your company. I'm Austin Pollock. I'll see you next time.
This is a 6 News podcast.